Well, listen, this is Do You Know Jack radio show coming at you from the sunny shores of the North Saskatchewan River right here in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. And on the line with me, I have author, A&R, exec music industry mogul Dorothy Carvello on the line, who wrote a book, Anything for a Hit, an A&R woman's story of surviving the music industry. Dorothy, sorry I'm a little late to the party. I know your book came out September 4th, but I'm glad you're on the line now.
No, thank you so much for having me. We're still doing press. You know, the book is growing and getting a wider audience every day, which is exactly what I wanted. So I'm thrilled.
Well, now I know the topic, and of course I've had a chance to peruse the book and actually read it cover to cover. So I mean, before we get into the actual meat and bones of the subject matter, I mean, it has been several months since the book released. So I mean, I guess I'm curious now that the book has had a chance to get out there a little bit, sort of what some of the more specific or unique responses have been.
The responses have been 100% positive. No blowback from the book about any of the people that I wrote about, because I told the truth in writing my story and how it related to me.
Uh-huh.
And I've received an outpouring of response from women and men all over the world, actually. I just got something yesterday from a man in the Philippines that read my book, and people love it. They love the honesty, and they relate to this business in particular, the sexism of it.
Uh-huh.
And people are ready to hear these stories and not have these men portrayed as godlike people anymore. They're ready for that myth to be busted, and that's why the response has been good.
Yeah, now, you mentioned, the men of the music industry. I mean, essentially, the book kind of, characterizes your time as sort of, at least for the first while, as the first female A&R exec at Atlantic Records, and your many, many struggles in a more or less misogynistic era in the music industry, right? I mean, that's kind of the cliff notes on it.
Yes, I mean, the music business at that time was just a free-for-all. The men did whatever they wanted, and there were no women in powerful positions. But it's relatable today, and still the fact that there are still no women in really powerful positions. They have a few women running operating companies, but there's never been a woman actually in the senior corporate job that are held right now in the American music business by three British men, Max Lusada, Rob Stringer, and Lucian Grange, the three labels that are left. And also women still get paid less than men, even if they're running an operating company. They're paid by several $1 million less than a male, just based on gender.
That's, I mean, that's unreal. I'm speechless. I mean, I suppose this is something that's maybe been swept under the rug for so many years, or I don't want to say a general ignorance, but sometimes society has a hard time accepting that those cold hard truths about things that maybe are morally reprehensible.
Well, yes. I mean, look, in this country we have Alabama just passed an abortion law that's setting the whole country back into the dark ages. So the fact that women, it's a known fact in America that white women are paid 70 cents on the dollar for every male,
Uh-huh.
and women of color are paid even less. So it is a fact of life, and it's just based on gender. And we have men making these salaries and these decisions and not giving equal rights. And we don't have an equal rights amendment in America. And, the women are treated differently and poorly. And we're punished at every turn. You're punished if you get pregnant and want to have a family in the corporate structure. That's considered a vacation. And,
right,
the men, it's just different. The men are treated better. And in this country and in the music business in particular, these men are rewarded for bad behavior.
Yeah.
A lot of these places are publicly traded companies. And the men are just, doing whatever they want to do. They feel they have the right to touch women, to speak to women, differently than the way they speak to the men. And they get away with it. Well, they've gotten away with it, and I don't really see anything changing too much right now. I see no companies addressing this issue of abuse in the corporate workplace, and everything is they're just waiting for a woman to accuse a man and then fire the man without any kind of training or retraining of the workforce at all, or discussions of these events.
Yeah. Now, I know part of your process for this book goes back quite a long way. I think you started to keep a detailed diary of your time in the music business really early on. I mean, were you keeping that diary just because of some of the things that were happening?
Well, yes. I couldn't believe the shit that went on at Atlantic Records and the things that came out of Ahmet Ertegun's mouth. Ahmet Ertegun, a legend and an icon in the music business, and everybody revered him. But yet, he didn't even know what day it was, what time it was. He was constantly on drugs in the office, and I couldn't believe it. And I knew that my time with him would one day, if he didn't reward me in the corporate structure, which he didn't, I knew one day I would be able to, tell the story of what he was really like to the music business. And, he was a psycho, but it doesn't discredit what he did in terms of being a great talent finder and everything like that. But
yeah,
again, if a woman did that stuff, they would be harshly punished for it.
Yeah. Now, I think maybe around 1996 is when you first started to think about basically putting your journal and your notes into book form. So I guess that's about a 22-year process. I guess part of my question too is I think the book was sold in about April of 2017. So I guess what makes now the perfect moment for some of the stuff to come out, apart from what you've already characterized in terms of the blatant sexism in the industry that existed back then?
Yes, I sold my book, and it was written before the Me Too movement started. And it was released during the Me Too movement, and that's what made it a little bit, more relevant to speak around these issues. But I knew I was getting a raw deal back in 1987, because if you're the recipient of this type of treatment, it's not fun, it's not pleasant, it's downright brutal to constantly get fired from every job and start every job at a entry-level salary.
Yeah.
Why a man would come in, entry-level man with no experience, and make more money than me. So when you're receiving it, you know it's wrong, but fighting back is very difficult. And, they would just fire you because nobody was interested in hearing what they considered complaints. And they didn't want to change anything because it benefited, white male culture.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely would agree. It's like you said, it's a strange time. I mean, you mentioned, Alabama and their ridiculousness, but I mean, at the same time in the music industry, you have iconic Motley Crue releasing The Dirt as a, quote unquote cautionary tale. I know Skid Row comes up quite a number of times in your book, possibly one of your greater finds. I mean, have you had a chance to see the Motley movie, and does that kind of match up with some of the behaviors in the bands that were going on then?
Well, Motley Crue was the worst of the worst. I believe it's an accurate account. And, one of the things that came out of the book for me was Tom Zutaut, the A&R guy who'd signed Motley Crue. He reached out to me after he read my book, and we were competitors, not friends at the time, and he's been very supportive. And he, I think that Motley Crue in that era was the worst offenders. Not every band acted like that or degraded women in that fashion. Certainly not Skid Row or Bon Jovi, or even Aerosmith when I went on the road with them. But that culture was really, a lot of executives displayed that culture, shockingly enough, acted like they were rock stars. And the kind of male that's attracted to this business is like that movie Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah.
These are guys that really, have no confidence around women. They didn't date a lot of women, and they get into the music business, and they flip out, and they feel self-entitled to start abusing women, having sex with artists, having sex with female employees, regardless of the fact that they're married. And they just do whatever they want. And at that time, the companies rewarded these guys.
Yeah.
Unfairly so.
Yeah.
And, you can't have sex with artists. They're corporate assets, which means they're employees of the company. So it's the same thing. It's a form of sexual harassment, and nobody disciplines these guys, or they're not reprimanded for it.
I guess that's something that really, I mean, it shouldn't have surprised me, but I mean, I guess that's one of the major, themes throughout your book, is that sex, drugs, and rock and roll weren't just for the artists, but the executives as well.
Yeah, the executives are worse sometimes than the behavior of the artist. So,
yeah.
And they just did whatever they wanted, and like I said, it's a certain type of person is attracted to this business.
Yeah.
It's not a business of morality is an afterthought. These guys just come in it to do whatever they want, and they got away with it.
Yeah.
And they became very wealthy, into the millions of dollars, with this type of behavior, and it should not have been allowed.
Yeah. I just, pivoting a little bit here in the conversation too. I mean, you talk about those early days and how you basically worked your butt off just trying to get into that A&R position. And, once you got there, I guess part of my curiosity too is when you were looking for bands and when you're A&Ring bands, I mean, was there something you were looking for in those days? Like, what was the it factor of a band like Skid Row, for instance?
Well, what we always looked for, and it was drilled into our head, and that's the title of the book, is you had to have a hit.
Yeah.
And in those days, there was a formula at radio. Radio was the way back then that records were broken, acts were broken. So, you really needed a strong hook in terms of what the chorus of a song was. And if you had that, then it would be commercially viable, and that's what I looked for. Skid Row was a little bit different because they were a band that was being backed by John Bon Jovi and going to have the Bon Jovi tour back then. And Bon Jovi in 1988 was the biggest band in the world.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like a no-brainer because you knew if they would go on tour, they'd be exposed to all those people and that they would get radio play and sell records. So that was really... a different circumstance, but it always starts, what you look for is the song, and the song that, to me, was always about commercial. What was commercial, what could get played, what could sell.
Right. So then 30 years later, I mean, has anything really changed? I mean, obviously a lot has, but I mean, in your own characterization, I suppose, what has changed?
Well, you have no more. When I started, you had 6 majors and all indies. Now you only have 3 record companies, so the workforce has gotten smaller. Streaming is dominant.
Yeah.
That's the way people get their music, less of albums. People care less about albums. We used to have to make an album, 8 to 12 songs, and do all of that. People don't care. It's more song-oriented. And also the men, because of the Me Too movement, it really hasn't hit the music industry wide, but there's a little bit more. They're all afraid, because they know that the shoe is going to drop at any moment. And also women are a little bit more empowered to speak up, and there'll be less blowback on the woman. If the woman speaks up now, she's not going to be fired. An investigation will take place.
Right.
So that's what's changed. But it's a much smaller business than it was. And for the first time in many years, it's starting to make money due to streaming.
Yeah, you keep seeing, things from time to time on social media across streams that, you could have potentially millions of plays and only a few $1,000s of money being made. So, I mean, I hope that's certainly that process of, giving the artists their due, at least from a financial perspective, is changing because, I mean, the stats seem very, very unfair.
Well, yeah, I agree, but that's always the way. The artist is always going to get screwed, so they have to decide what do you really need a record company for.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, it's just basically a bank, and you know, and if you know there are other ways to get your music out there. You really have to think about it.
yeah. You mentioned the title briefly just a few minutes ago too. I mean, one thing that really struck me right off the bat is just in the phrase "anything for a hit," because I mean, you know, to me, like a hit is a song, obviously, but then, that title could have a bit of a duality to it in terms of, a mild or a slight implication towards addiction and potentially drug addiction. I mean, did you choose the title and was the metaphor
Yeah,
supposed to be evident like I'm reading it?
yeah, it was like a double entendre, but it mostly applied to hits. That's in terms of music, but yeah, drugs too. I mean, I never took drugs, but drugs were all over the place, and a lot of people did them and needed them to do their job. And addiction is, look, I was addicted to the music business and addicted to these men. You can get addicted to many things in life, and it's an unhealthy way to live your life, and it took me a long time to figure that out and professional psychologists to help me figure it out. You know, why did I need these people? Why did I need these men? What was it about me that was attracted to this? I wanted to be into that lifestyle too. And on some levels, I thought, a lot of the shit that the guys did was funny. I wish I could get away with it. And when I tried to do it, you can't because women are held to a different standard. If a
Right.
woman has multiple sex partners, they're condemned. If a man has multiple sex partners, they're the greatest, sexy stud guys. How could they not? So it's a different type of it's just a blatant double standard.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess just to wrap things up here, I mean, you mentioned your blatant honesty throughout the chapters of the book. I mean, was there anything that had to be left out of the book just because of legalities, or were you pretty much no holds barred here?
No toll bar. There was a couple wording and phrasing was changed for legalities, but that's, a word or two. I had very little editing. And yeah, some stories were left out that I speak about when I do my speaking tours because you can't put everything into a book, and I needed to make a flow from the beginning to the end.
Yeah,
So,
for
but
sure.
no, I was not stopped by the book company or by the lawyers.
Yeah, because I know, like, in having done lots of autobiography interviews over the years, I mean, there's always a a process where they, examine the pages and, and they try and think of legality issues. So it's good to hear that the message was out there and, there was very little, if anything, changed.
Well, I was very lucky because Chicago Review Press knew what kind of book I wanted to write. I wanted to tell the truth. I wanted to name these men. And they were supportive, and not every book company is.
Yeah.
And also my lawyers were supportive. And I think that that's very important in terms of First Amendment. And again, any of the men were free to challenge me. And we would have had to gone through a legal process, but I was prepared to do it. Because you have to put up or shut up. And this is the kind of book, I didn't want to whitewash anything. I didn't want to lie. I wanted to tell my truth of what happened to me, what these people did. And, you're very fortunate when you get a company that's going to back you and support you.
For sure.
Especially before Me Too movement. So.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, the book is called Anything for a Hit, an A&R woman's story of surviving the music industry. I suppose the operative question would be, I mean, you mentioned how the PR train on this book is still rolling, which is great to hear that your words and your message is getting out there. But I mean, in terms of after the dust settles, so to speak, what's your next step, Dorothy? I mean, what do you got going on?
Well, I have the paperback edition comes out October 1st. And we're going to do some more promotion for that. And then I'm working on another book about Nashville.
Wow.
So that should be interesting. We're going to talk about those, the hypocrites in country music and expose them. and God, country, and where they really, really put their foot down on women in ways they don't play them on radio, and the female artist, and expose that part of the business, which makes millions for the companies, and gets this holier than thou attitude. So we're going to check in and see what's going on down there.
Sounds definitely interesting.
It will be.
I'm sure it is, and Dorothy, I really enjoyed reading your book. It's a tale, probably I would imagine, that has never really been told. So it's very brave of you to put yourself out there in the way you have, and I mean, good luck in your future endeavors, and maybe once the Nashville book comes out, we can chat again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jack. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. All right. You have a good day.